Hi all! Today I'm going to show you how to do some ceramic glass painting. I know a lot of you perhaps do glass painting. We're using glass paints, which is fine. They're also temperature sensitive when you're putting them onto glass. Cold glass, they tend to run. But I have a technique, and I've been doing it for many years, of painting onto glass that does work very well. And I use ceramic paints. And particular ones that I use are these, which are the Pepo 150 range. They are heat treated in an ordinary domestic oven for about 5 minutes. I usually put them in about 150. Once it starts smelling, then I turn it off. They're non-toxic. They're a water-based, an enamel type paint. They make a wonderful gloss when they're finished, and the item when you're finished is totally waterproof. The manufacturer actually says they're dishwasher proof. But I've produced so many glasses and the paint hasn't come off yet. They're absolutely beautiful to paint with as well, and they mix wonderfully well. Right, okay. I do a lot of hand painted bottles, which I buy cork battery lights for, and they just look wonderful when they're finished. They light up and the stained glass effect is really good. So the way I do this, and this is purely my technique, I've just started these two, so I'll show you exactly what I've done so far. Now, to the bottles. Okay, I'm going to do today an ordinary wine bottle, and if you can see, I've actually painted already onto them a rough outline of what I intend to do. In this case, I'm having bottles within a bottle. I'm doing wine bottles and glasses. Now I've done that one in black purely because the colouring of the item I'm doing is going to be fairly dark, and I didn't want white to show through. But normally I would do white, and this is the flower one I intend to do later. Now the white will give you a base, or the underpaint will give you a base once it's dried for your coloured paints to key onto, which is the secret. Because with glass paints, you paint straight onto the glass, you get a translucent effect, but they can run. Now, these aren't particularly friendly for weather gets really cold and the glass gets really cold. They prefer it to be warm. But by putting the white or the black on, it gives you that base to start. I mean, actually, if you look closely here, the white's already running a little bit. That's not a problem. We can soon overcome that when we put the other colours on. But yeah, it is a cold day at the moment and we haven't got any heating on, so it causes a few issues. Don't put it on too thick, as I say. That's what happens when you do. If you put it on fairly thin, it will still rough the glass up and give you an outline to follow. Okay, so we have our bottles prepared. Now, what I didn't tell you was one of the best places to buy these from is online. Not easy to get, but if you put the name in, go online, you can find several places that will sell them. It's got more difficult since Brexit, funnily enough. I believe they're French. Whether that's got anything to do with it, I don't know. However, not to worry. There are cheaper brands, cheaper versions out there, which don't cost you as much. If you just want to try it out, you can buy some more student colour type ones as well. Now, I'm going on to the next stage, which is actually colouring these in. Now, I use a rigger brush, which is like this. Nice long flexible brush, great for doing nice straight lines on your bottle. And I combine that with some very, very small brushes, like modeller's brushes. So you've got such a small amount of paint that you need. Now these little pots last forever. You can get a thinner to go in them. So when they start thickening up as they are inclined to do towards the end, you can actually make them last twice as long. That's really good stuff, and as I say, it works really well. No more expensive than the pots of paint themselves. So we start. This one I'm doing wheats of corn hanging over poppies and some little white flowers below. They might be blue. I'll make my mind up when I get there. You don't need a lot on your brush. If you get a lot on your brush and it starts to drip like that, tap it onto the pot. You don't want that much because then it'll start running down the... It's better to do 2 or 3 coats in one place than it is to put it on thick in one go. And we start very, very gently. It doesn't matter if you leave the marks in the paint. That adds to the authenticity of what you're painting. There we go. I will just, for effect's sake, I mean, each one of these bottles can take me an hour and a half to 2 hours to do. So what I'm going to do is a little bit at a time and just put it together for you. I'll do a corn wheat, and then I'll show you how to do a poppy. And when it's sort of progressing on, we'll show you a bit more. So, there we go. That's the top layer. My suggestion is you watch that for a while. As I say, it's a cold day and it may run. If it runs, just get your brush, drag it in and make it part of what you're doing, because lines in the paint will, with the back of the white base, will just make it look more authentic. And yeah, just drag it around till you get the feel that that's a head of wheat there. And we'll do this one as well. There we go, up there, like that. And again, you can let it dry, keep going back to it, keep your eye on it. I mean, if you have a tip, if you have a bottle like this, you can, it's a square one, you can lay it flat and then paint it. That will obviously give you less worrying about it running. I can't do that because I've been able to show you what I'm doing on video. But normally I would lay this down flat and paint the one surface at a time. That way you don't get so much running. But there are times when running is a good thing because you want to mix. And these colours, as I said, do mix beautifully. And I'll show you that now. So that's gold paint I put on there. And just for the effect, I will show you what happens when you mix. Wet on wet is what I call it. You get the brown. And this is brown paper. Oh, it's called amber. And you literally take the brown. And again, you don't want a huge amount. And you start running it through. Gradually running it through. Take it down, take it down. There we go. Gives you a little bit of depth, a little bit of colour going in. And on the stem as well. And again. See how the rigger brush makes it a lot easier. You can make it as fine or as thick as you want. There we go. Any watercolour brush will do. You don't want a stiff bristle brush purely because that will just take the paint off as you're putting it on. It's got to be a soft brush. Now my suggestion after doing this, it will be to leave it dry. And then before you put another colour in, I intend to put white in, I intend to put black in as highlights. And when I progress this video on, you'll see the other colours going, what it's like when they go in, and how it brings the corn to life. Okay, as you can see, I've now strategically done little bits of white, little bits of black. It's nothing realistic about it at all. It's purely highlights that just make them look attractive. We're going for a design here rather than realism. All right. Now, my next thing to do is a poppy. Poppies are one of my specialities. You don't need to be an artist. They're very quick and easy to paint. As you can see, I've just done a basic shape here of a poppy. And I'm going to use, first of all, this colour, which is coral. Beautiful coral colour. And it's a lovely bright vivid colour. I like to do my bottles blingy. But however, I have been known to do black and white and what have you. The choice and is entirely up to you, but this is just a design I do and is very popular. So let me show you how I do this. We take the coral paint and we do this one poppy. First of all, you just literally little strokes with your rigger brush. Just, there's a bit of blobby coming down there that can cause you grief. Nice thin coat all over like this, colouring over the white. Simple as this. Too much paint on there. We must watch paint. In the summer when it's hot, the paint dries too quick. But at least you don't have the problem of drying and running down the bottle. If it should run down the bottle, it's not a problem. It's water-based. Get a piece of damp cloth, rub it off. Very bit of tissue or something like that, and just very slightly damp. Come off. I quite often use my fingers and end up covered in it, but hey, that's me. However, if it's run down and dries before you actually cook it, all you've got to do is get a little sharp blade, tip of a knife or something like that, and scrape it, and it will come off. However, once it's cooked, you've had it. It's there to stay. Now, as you can see, it's quite difficult doing it from this angle. I normally sit with these in my hand to paint, but from the point of view of filming, I'm sort of having to peer around the camera, so bear with me. That's the coral on. I don't wait for it to dry. It's entirely up to you if you do, but I prefer to, as I say, mix as I go. I'm then going for orange, which is a lovely lighter version of the coral, but it does work quite well. It just highlights it and brings it to life a little bit. Now, quite simply, go over it with the orange paint. Again, leaving streaks in the paint. It just adds to the authenticity and the texture of the actual finished bottle. They will be shiny, but it adds a little bit of texture. The idea of the designs is simplicity. Total simplicity. And when that one's done, I'll go for a slightly different colour. I was going for scarlet, but I think we'll go for a red today. Now this is a ruby red, which is obviously darker. And the idea is to give you a little bit of a centre to the petals. Something that's graduating into the black in the middle, which I will tell you about later. We can't actually finish this until that red paint is dry. Or nearly dry, and it really doesn't take that long to dry. You see it's already starting to go off here, and once it's not going to run, then you can put the black on, but black is crucial to be done on dry. So you carry on with all the colours. Now this is why I have two bottles on the go at the same time, because when you get to a stage where you can't do any more because you're waiting for the colour to dry, you can then go on to the second bottle and do the crucial bits on that. And by the time that's done, you can go back to this bottle and carry on with the next stage. That way, idle hands aren't happening. And I've got a few of these to do for Christmas presents, so I want to get them done. I'll show you a bit more when it's all been done. Okay, as you can see, I've now put the base colours right around the bottle. My sunflower, and as you can see from the stem here, I've got dark green and I put an olive green on top while it was wet, and also on the petals. Even if they run a bit, they still give that feel of reality. And the poppies are now done and ready to wait for the final touches. And what I've got to do next when it's dry is the centres of the poppies are going to be painted black. And then I've got to do some Clisson work on it, which is another form of paint that people do. And it comes in a tube. And it's a tube like this. And it's basically pepper, but it's thick. And you pipe it on to give you a lovely effect. Well, I use it as part of the pattern, which I will show you in part 2. Unfortunately, I will have to go into part 2 because I've still got a bit to show you. It'll be on my channel. But my next stage will be to paint the centres of the flowers, which I've got to wait, as I say, till it's dry, because you want the centres to pop out to make it look like they're coming out at you. And to do that, you do not want the colours running in. This first stage is lovely. I mean, look at the effect of those petals. And that's painting wet on wet. You have to watch, make sure that they're not running into one another. But if it does, it isn't an issue. You just paint. When they're dry, you paint more green over to make it more effective, which is what I will be doing anyway. And again, the way I've got the white here underneath looking like stems, if you paint the dark green over and do it lightly, you still get that effect of the leaves coming through. This is going to be painted brown. And as I say, I will then be putting the beading on, which is done with the Glissane work, which will be all over the poppies and in various other places in blacks and golds. Okay, so I'm going to call it quits on part 1. Wait for that to dry. While that's drying, I will then go on to my bottles of wine. So that's my next stage to do those. They will be then drying out while I go back and show you how to do part 2, which will take you through the finishing touches of painting it. And it will show you what I do. It's quite simply, put it on a baking tray, put it in the oven, 150°C, and let it have about 5 minutes. A cold oven, I must stress that, a cold oven. You put it onto a cold baking tray, into a cold oven, turn it on to 150, let it come to temperature, and more or less as soon as it comes to temperature and the glass is hot to the touch, take it straight out. Don't do anything with it, let it cool down. When it's cooled down, then you wash off the grease and that's built on the outside. Very lightly, give it a light wash off with soapy water, and it's finished. But I'll remind you again of that at the end of part 2. Always a cold oven. Okay, right then, I'll say bye-bye and I'll speak to you again in part 2. Thank you, bye.